Welcome to Women Lead, a production of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute. We are your hosts. I'm Bernadette Norris-Weeks.
I'm Michelle Austin-Pammies.
And I'm Kathy Eggleston.
Our criminal justice system is charged with keeping all communities safe, fostering prevention, rehabilitation, and ensuring fair and equal justice. But in too many places and in too many ways, our system is falling short of that mandate and with devastating consequences. Outdated and unfair laws drain resources that are needed to make meaningful change.
People of color, particularly Black, Native American, and Latino people, have felt the impact of discrimination within the criminal justice system because of laws and policies that violate their human rights and the principles of equal justice. We need more people within the criminal justice system running it who can promote those ideals.
Well, the good news is that there's been some bipartisan support for criminal justice reform, and some of the faces leading new efforts for reform are more representative of the people who have been historically overrepresented and marginalized in the criminal justice system. Our guest today is a great example of a qualified leader who cares. He is Harold F. Pryor, the elected Broward County State Attorney representing Florida's 17th Judicial Circuit. And we also have some very special guests with us today.
We do, ladies. We have 3 local bar association presidents, and they are terrific leaders in our community. They are Deanne Jackson. She is the president of the T.J. Reddick Bar Association. We also have Travis D. Randolph, who is the president of the Wilkie D. Ferguson Bar Association. And finally, we will have Nakia Ruffin, who is the president of the Gwen S. Cherry Black Women Lawyers Association.
We'll be right back with Harold F. Pryor, Broward County State Attorney.
Women Lead television show is being brought to you by Toyota, inspiring all of us to let's go places.
At the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, our mission is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. We do this in a variety of different ways, including but not limited to providing mentorship opportunities for young professionals where we assist in helping to create paths to leadership. We empower women to develop capacities for social change. We produce programs that promote heritage awareness, and we provide training opportunities for business and government. Our institute holds seminars focused on professional success techniques, and we host many other events such as our popular Advocates for Change and Leaders Connect. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute publishes a magazine called Women Lead. Our signature event is the Women of Color Empowerment Conference, a yearly conference where hundreds of leaders gather from all across the United States and beyond. To learn more about membership and how you can support our programs or be a sponsor of the Women Lead TV, visit us at nationalwomenofcolor.com. Again, that's nationalwomenofcolor.com.
The law office of Austin Pammies Norris Weeks Powell is a full-service law firm practicing in the area of governmental law, including the representation of municipalities, civil litigation, personal injury, real estate, and corporate transactional matters. With over 100 years of collective experience, our attorneys are admitted to practice before state courts, federal courts, and the United States Supreme Court. We are conveniently located in downtown Fort Lauderdale and can be reached at 954-768-9770. Or for more information about the law firm of Austin Pammies Norris Weeks Powell, visit our website at apnwlaw.com. That's apnwlaw.com.
We have with us an extraordinary human being, Harold F. Pryor. He's the elected Broward State Attorney for Florida's 17th Judicial Circuit. He leads a staff of 462 employees, including 213 prosecutors. He's the first Black state attorney in Broward and the first Black man to be elected state attorney in the state of Florida. Mr. Pryor graduated from the University of Florida undergrad and he received his law degree from Nova Southeastern University's Shepherd Broad College of Law. His legal experience includes having been a civil attorney in private practice and also a Broward Assistant State Attorney, prosecuting serious criminal offenses in the Felony Trial Unit. Since he's been elected, he has been committed to making sensible reforms to our criminal justice system. Welcome to the show, Mr. Pryor.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us with Women Lead, and let's dive right in. I was astounded to see that statistic from the U.S. Department of State that there are roughly 24.9 million men, women, and children worldwide who are victims of forced labor and sex exploitation.
Yes.
Now, I know that you have a human trafficking coordinator now in your office, but we have so much going on. Resources are spread thin. Tell us, what does this person do, and what kind of impact can they make on behalf of these folks with the resources that you have?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing your platform with me. Human trafficking is an important issue for me and my office. To give you some statistics, if you look at Broward County and Miami-Dade, every year, when you look at the studies, we go back and forth as to number one and number two in leading in exploitation of children in the sex trafficking realm. And it so happens, I believe recently we were number two, sometimes we're number one. Also, another disturbing fact or statistic is that when you look at human trafficking, it's a $150 billion industry worldwide.
Wow.
Which is disturbing. And then finally, when you look at the enterprise, the criminal enterprise of human trafficking worldwide and in the state of Florida is the second fastest growing criminal enterprise. It surpassed illegal arms sales. So that's an important issue. And so it's an international issue, and it so happens that South Florida, Broward County, is a hub. So it was important for me to have a human trafficking unit that falls under our sexual battery or sexual crimes unit. The director of our human trafficking unit is Ms. Jamaro Johnson. She is an experienced director in human trafficking, and we actually started a task force, the first of its kind in South Florida, where we have the FBI as a stakeholder, the U.S. Attorney's Office. We also got the Department of Homeland Security as a member of our human trafficking task force to combat this serious issue. And so we're working hard as an office to educate our community, but also to crack down on human trafficking here.
You are the first Black man ever elected to be the state attorney in the state of Florida. I mean, I think that is just huge, right? And so I'm wondering from your standpoint, you're talking about different programs that you're doing and how you're training your staff to think differently about sentencing and charging people and all of these other things. How do you think your colleagues around the state are handling similar issues? Are you hearing that people are doing some of the same things, or are you just basically cutting edge at this point in terms of what you're doing in your office?
I think a lot of what we're doing is cutting edge. I think for day one, we no longer prosecute misdemeanor levels of cannabis or standalone possession of drug paraphernalia cases. We took a unique approach. It wasn't a unique approach. It was actually out of necessity. It was bleeding our resources. We were spending an exorbitant amount of money and resources to try these cases that generally the public don't frown upon, right? It doesn't affect the general public safety, the public good. Diversion programs. We offer the most diversion programs out of anyone in the state. I think even more so than Miami-Dade. Our goal and my goal was to make diversion programs the rule and not the exception, because studies show when you give people an opportunity for first-time offenses and maybe sometimes for second-time offenses, if you get them in a diversion program where you can correct that delinquent behavior both for adults and juveniles, the recidivism rate goes down substantially, right? And we don't see those people again in the criminal justice system, and that's my goal. I don't want to see these people again. And so it's been cutting edge, and we really look at it as, let's try to give people opportunities. Let's try to give people second chances within reason. My goal has always been to reform the criminal justice system while not compromising the safety of our communities. And what does that mean? we're not going to let everyone out. As my grandfather would say, some people deserve to go under the jail, right? And there are people that jail is designed for, and you better believe I will prosecute those individuals vigorously, and we will do what's right. But also, we can't take that approach of locking everyone away and throwing away the key. There has to be some balance. There has to be some form of justice, and that's a unique position of being a prosecutor. Sometimes you're the defense attorney, sometimes because you're trying to protect that person's liberty and constitutional rights because it's the right thing to do as a prosecutor. And then sometimes you're vigorously prosecuting and fighting for victims' rights. We just have a unique position in the criminal justice system, and I really think it's important. I think it's the most important position in the criminal justice system.
We don't want you to be just one cutting edge prosecutor in the state. How do we roll out cutting edge in the state?
Right. Well, I think a lot of it is just what I talked about earlier. Is just laying aside your pride and your ego as an individual. Sometimes you can get engrossed with the power and the positions. That, well, I'm the state attorney. There's times where I have to humble myself and sit across the sheriff when we don't agree on things. Sometimes I have to humble myself and sit across the public defender, law enforcement agencies. Right. When I ran for office, I was not endorsed by one police union. Right. I didn't seek their endorsement, and they weren't seeking to give it to me, right? But on day one, I reached out from the whole month of January when I took office on January 5th. Every day, I set out a goal to sit down across a police chief, every police chief in Broward County. We have about 31 municipalities. I met with the 16 or 17 police chiefs, and I sat down with the sheriff, and my goal was to sit down and meet with them and let them know, hey, we can do this together. We can address some of the reforms that I think you may think is crazy, but let's sit down and I'll tell you my reasoning behind it and how we can reimagine what public safety actually is, and we're not going to endanger the community. However, I want to hear your side of the story. And I will say they've been receptive to that. And so I guess to answer your question, not so much of a roundabout way, open lines of communication. Being willing to sit down with people you normally would not want to sit down with. Because one, my job requires it. I don't just represent one segment of society. And I think there's a lot of value to that in being willing to do that. Laying aside your pride, laying aside your ego, and being a leader. And that's what I pride myself on. And I think we're going to make waves. I think we're a shining example in the South Florida. And we're a shining example in the state of Florida, and I think throughout the country.
We know that just cybercrime in general is growing in some places exponentially, and we're all at risk. How are you dealing with that?
One of the first divisions that I created once I took office was a cybercrimes unit. And also we sought a cybercrimes grant that I'm confident that we'll get, where we'll have more money and resources to A, bring in more attorneys, B, bring in more investigators to help us investigate these crimes, but also create a training aspect to where we can train our prosecutors to better identify those cyber crimes, but also educate and train law enforcement agencies to be better law enforcement officers to deal with that growing trend.
Let's talk about wellness issues of people that work for your office and really folks who are involved with the criminal justice system. I understand it can be a very stressful space to work in, right? The things that people experience each and every day has to be just a lot. And so I'm wondering, I saw an article recently that you and the public defender, Gordon Weeks, co-wrote about retaining lawyers within your offices. And so I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about, what you're doing to address, awareness of mental health issues.
We're constantly trying to create ways to get outlets for our attorneys. We're looking to do a health and wellness yoga, instructions. We have so many attorneys in our office that I recently found out that are actually yoga instructors. That's kind of their side hustle.
Wow.
So we're actually going to set up weekend yoga instructions for our attorneys and support staff. Also, we reached out to mental health professionals. Many of our homicide prosecutors and our sex crime prosecutors who deal with rape and children who have been raped or sexually abused, they see some of the most gory and gruesome things on their day-to-day. And so we're looking into getting them mental health help, having an in-house mental health professional to come in every so often to provide that outlet to them free of cost to help them out, to cope with that. So those are things that we can do to boost their morale, to make them feel and really get them to understand that I care about them. We care about what they do, and their functions to our community is important function, and that we want them to be their best. And if they're the best, we as a community, we're safer.
Very good, very good. Well, we've enjoyed talking with you, and we actually have with us in the studio 3 Bar Association presidents who are thrilled to be in a position to hopefully ask you a few questions. So if you'll stay tuned with us, we'll be right back after these messages, and we will have some Bar Association presidents and some very special guests who will introduce themselves. So stay with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
This is James.
Jimmy! Mom, Dad, this is James. Jimmy!
James? James Harrison from Roosevelt High?
Jimmy! Yeah! Oh! You good, Jimmy?
The 2021 Toyota RAV4.
Jimmy!
The RAV for all of you. Right now, lease a new 2021 Toyota RAV4 Elite for just $249 a month for 36 months. Toyota. Let's go places.
At the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, our mission is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. We do this in a variety of different ways, including but not limited to providing mentorship opportunities for young professionals where we assist in helping to create paths to leadership. We empower women to develop capacities for social change. We produce programs that promote heritage awareness, and we provide training opportunities for business and government. Our institute holds seminars focused on professional success techniques, and we host many other events such as our popular Advocates for Change and Leaders Connect. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute publishes a magazine called Women Lead. Our signature event is the Women of Color Empowerment Conference, a yearly conference where hundreds of leaders gather from all across the United States and beyond. To learn more about membership and how you can support our programs or be a sponsor of the Women Lead TV, visit us at nationalwomenofcolor.com. Again, that's nationalwomenofcolor.com.
The law office of Austin, Pammies, Norris, Weeks, Powell is a full-service law firm practicing in the area of governmental law, including the representation of municipalities, civil litigation, personal injury, real estate, and corporate transactional matters. With over 100 years of collective experience, our attorneys are admitted to practice before state courts, federal courts, and the United States Supreme Court. We are conveniently located in downtown Fort Lauderdale and can be reached at 954-768-9770. Or for more information about the law firm of Austin, Pammies, Norris, Weeks, Powell, visit our website at apnwlaw.com. That's apnwlaw.com.
Welcome back to Women Lead with Harold F. Pryor, Broward County State Attorney. I am Nakia Ruffin, the president of the Gwen S. Cherry Black Women Lawyers Association, along with...
Hi, my name is Travis Randolph. I'm the president of the Wilkie D. Ferguson Jr. Bar Association.
My name is Deanne Jackson. I am president of the TJ Reddick Bar Association. Well, Harold, I will ask you the first question. There sometimes is tension between Black prosecutors and defense attorneys. What are you doing as the first Black state attorney in Broward County to ensure that everyone is working together in the best interest of the community?
Well, Dan, thank you so much for the question. I am honored to be here. I would say this, I'm a past president of a bar association, but I have to give props to the TJ Reddick Bar Association, the best bar association in South Florida, in the state of Florida, in the country. Well, you have to do it, you have to represent. But no, thank you for that question, and thank you all for your service and what you do. It's important. I think how we fix that issue is we need more Black attorneys or Black prosecutors. I think the problem is we just didn't see it. I'll give you my story. Growing up, I never met a Black attorney growing up, right? Let alone a Black prosecutor. I didn't know that until I came down here for law school, Fort Lauderdale for law school, and I see Chuck Morton, who's a nice dressed black man walking through the school. He was a adjunct professor, and I introduced myself to him and said, "Hey, who are you? What's your name?" "I'm Chuck Morton. I'm a prosecutor." You know, my mind was blown. I think we need to see more people of color in that space. That's the only way that we can kind of really release some of the tension there. But also, people really need to understand the function of the prosecutor, right? Growing up for me, the thought was their only function, the sole function of prosecutor was to throw people in prison, in jail. That was it, right? But there's so much more to the job. And I learned that even after I became a line prosecutor, serving in an office for 3 years. You do more than just put people in prison. You're advocating for victims' rights. You're keeping the community safe, and sometimes you're playing the role of criminal defense attorney because criminal defense attorneys aren't. Some of them don't do their job, right? But also sometimes you have to provide, not sometimes, but all the time, you have to provide exculpatory evidence that would lead someone to be not guilty or lead someone to believe that this person didn't commit the crime. There's an ethical and moral obligation to do that. And so it's twofold. It's twofold to keep the community safe, but also you're guarding against that individual whose life and liberty is at stake. And you have to ensure that they get a fair shake in the criminal justice system. And so it's really a rebranding of what a prosecutor is and what a black prosecutor is. And I think that's an important function, and I think we need more people of color serving in that function.
Thank you.
As a prosecutor, how do you balance the role of ensuring that the system works and then making sure that it's not being disproportionately enforced or disproportionately regulated against people of color in South Florida?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's a challenge. That's a constant challenge because, one, you acknowledge and we understand that we have a criminal justice system that's been traditionally stacked against people that look like me, right, and poor people. And so how do you do that? How do you get in there and you try to upend and change the system? I believe it's in recruiting people from diverse backgrounds who can sympathize with the plight of people of color in this country, particularly in the criminal justice system. But also it's a training and education aspect that comes along with it. Implicit bias training, identification, cases that hinge on witness identification. One of the things that I did, we have a conviction review unit or a conviction integrity unit. And we had an opportunity to exonerate a man who was wrongfully convicted. And his conviction was based on faulty witness identification, right? And so it was important for me to get training in our office. So we've instituted implicit bias training across the office, not just that once time a year type of thing, but something that's continuous to educate our attorneys on really the racial inequities in our institutions in our country. And they need to understand that when they're going to court every day and seeing everyone in that box in the holding cell that are black, right? 90% of them are, right? But understanding how do we get to that, right? And really looking at those cases fairly. And so it's important for me to implement and institute training and education, continuous education in our office, not only for the white attorneys, but black attorneys as well. And I think that's one way that we can combat that and really chip away at the racial inequities and disparities that we see in the criminal justice system. But we're not the only parts in that, right? There's so many other people that play a role in that. We play a role in it, but the judges play a role in it, in their sentencing. Even the defense, people that defend them. Just because you have a public defender doesn't mean that they necessarily sympathize with your plight, right? Or understand where you come from or come from the same situations that we come from. And so that's important to me and going forward and how we will move forward as an office.
As a woman, as a mother, as a sister, and as a cousin to black men, I'm curious as to the relationship between the state attorney's office and the various police departments when it comes to stopping black men, and when those stops and the treatment of those black men it becomes improper by the police.
I view our office as state attorney. We're independent. We're independent law enforcement agencies. We're independent of judiciary. Our goal is to keep that independent mind when going forward on any particular case or issue, while understanding that a lot of our cases we have to work with law enforcement. And so I have to ensure that we have a good relationship with law enforcement with them understanding that if you do mess up, if you do break the law, we're going to hold you accountable. I'm proud to lead an agency, to lead a state attorney's office that is a shining example throughout the state and the country in prosecuting law enforcement officers. I can't tell you how many calls we get throughout the country where prosecutors are calling us, DAs are calling us and saying, hey, we saw that you prosecuted this officer. Could you give us tips on how you did that? We hold that mantle. Many people see us as a state attorney's office that is willing to prosecute law enforcement officers, and because of that, many of our law enforcement agencies don't like us. We have a strained relationship, and I've spent a lot of time trying to repair that, understanding that many of the law enforcement officers that I encounter on a day-to-day, or many that I encounter, they really care about their communities. They really want to get it right. And they really don't like the bad apples in their agencies that give them a bad name. And that was an eye-opener for me when I became a prosecutor. Seeing many of the law enforcement officers that actually do it right, that actually do their job right, who are actually ethical. Sometimes they don't get that shine. But one thing I will say, and you can take solace in knowing that many of the Broward County citizens can take solace in knowing that they have a state attorney who is not afraid to hold law enforcement officers accountable when, in fact, they do wrong. And we've taken steps to ensure that. And I think many people in Broward County can be proud of the work that we've done and the work that we're doing to strike that balance of understanding that we have a society where there is a need for law enforcement right now. Whatever side of the spectrum you're on, they're here. And we utilize them, and they serve an important function. And we need to utilize them right now to keep our community safe, but also striking the balance of understanding that when you do mess up and you do break the law, you won't get any special treatment because of a badge. We're going to treat you like anyone else, and we'll vigorously prosecute you and pursue a case against you if you break the law and you violate the trust of everyday citizens in Broward County.
Harold, thank you for taking the time and giving us this conversation today, and I think that everyone here at the table appreciates the wisdom and insight that you've given us today.
Well, ladies, we've never given up our seats before, but I really enjoyed watching the exchange and the questions that the Bar Association leaders had for our state attorney.
Anyway, I'm just really proud that Women Lead was able to bring these people together to have an in-depth conversation about criminal justice.
And to provide information to our audience so that you can
be empowered.